crackberry.com.
Welcome to Crackberry Live Podcast, episode 078 for Friday, October 21st, 2011.
Hey everybody, Kevin here for crackberry.com. It is the end of BlackBerry DevCon 2011. The Crack team is safely back in our homes, so it's time to do a podcast and talk about everything we saw this week. We've got Adam Zeiss on the air with us. We've got Blaze, aka Chris Parsons. And we've got Chris Umiastowski, who joined us down at DevCon this week also. Guys, you're all looking pretty dapper here. Blaze, you got some cigarettes. You're pretty stressed out, I think. We're ready to roll. So we got a lot to talk about today. We have a lot to talk about today. And before we get to all the news out of DevCon, and some might say lack of news out of DevCon, I think we need to start with the BlackBerry outage last week, because that was huge. So I don't know, maybe Chris, you take it away. What do you think? Give us a little recap of what went down and your take on it.
Okay, sure. So what went down? I mean, their network went down. It is not the first time that it's happened. It's I think it's the biggest outage in history. Am I right in saying that, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, what, like 3, almost 4 days for a global outage. I think, here we were only affected for maybe a day and a half. I'm frustrated by it because the way I see it, RIM, they aren't communicating very well about the outage, but they seem to have maybe an architectural problem. They have often had these outages where their so-called backup or cutover has not worked as it was supposed to work in testing, and has accordingly, according to them, it usually works in their testing, and, well, why doesn't it work live? So it definitely makes it hard for people to believe that RIM is a more reliable service, especially when you compare it to, the overall internet. I mean, if your carrier goes down, it usually doesn't go down for very long. The entire internet never goes down. You don't see big comparable services like Google.com going down. So it really makes you wonder whether or not RIM has some kind of architectural problem. That's my thinking on it, but I'm glad it's back up, and I'm glad that they tried to communicate with people about what's going on, and they're trying to make it up to their customers.
I think beyond just the service going down, what a lot of people are extremely surprised about is this ability for the knock to go down, or one market to be affected, but then for it to cascade through the rest of the world. So, it was a core switch that broke in Europe. There's a backlog of data, and then in turning it back on, that's when the rest of the world got affected somehow. And I think that's where you come back to the whole core architecture thing, right? I mean, that shouldn't happen, I would think. I mean, it's funny, you look at when they talk operating system and the benefits of QNX and everything runs in a siloed environment. That's obviously not what the knock is doing, because, one market can bring down another market.
Yeah, and every 5 minutes or something like that of actual downtime for RIM, it actually equates to approximately 2 hours or something like that, because of the backlog that it creates. Mm-hmm. Something along those lines.
They have a really unique situation, right? Because if Google was to go down or Amazon was to go down, an order or a search query just doesn't happen. But the emails in BlackBerry's case still get sent, and they do their best not to lose any emails, and therefore, the floodgates just build up, right? And I think that's why you get these cascading fails.
All I know is it made for a insanely busy couple of days of giving a lot of interviews. It really ruined my week, actually. I told everybody I saw RIM, I'm like, no more outages. It ruins my work week. I don't get anything done. But, one of the questions I got asked a lot was, does this mean the end of RIM? Is this going to really mess things up? And the answer I always gave was, you know what? If the knock went down and BlackBerry service, there's a service outage happens and nobody complained, that's when I would be worried about, the future of RIM. But the fact that service goes down and everybody flips out like it's the end of the world, that means RIM's got time to work through this tech transition. So, going into DevCon, I was actually more excited because of the outage, because I kind of knew, there's people out there depending on BlackBerry, and going to San Francisco, we'd get a good chance to see how far along RIM was with this tech transition as we, work to a QNX-based or BBX-based future.
Yeah, this was the first time that I worried that an outage would actually cause a loss of customers and a slowdown in their otherwise potential growth because it was so bloody long. But I'm with you. I mean, the fact that people are so pissed off that it's happening is a good sign in terms of, the passionate user base that we have. So that's good. But I'd like to see them keep the delays to a minimum. In the past, you'd have a couple of hours, people would complain about it, but everybody just forgets about it really quickly. And that's the other indicators. How quick does the complaining stop?
Well, this time around,
when it lasts 3 days, the complaining doesn't go away as quick. You can handle a few hours, but when it takes 2-3 days to go ahead and clear everything up, then that's when you really run into problems, and people tend to remember that just a little bit more because that's 3 days out of their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this time around, RIM is buying back the love of customers with free apps.
Has anybody downloaded any of them yet? They were supposed to be available Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, they're doing like one a day, I think.
So, Adam, how excited are you about free apps from RIM? And do you think it's enough? And do you care? Does it make a difference? Where do you stand on it?
No, I mean, but it goes back to, I guess, like your user case. Like, but for guys like us, it's like free apps, no big deal. Because especially if you look at the apps, I guess ultimately they're like some of the biggest RIM partners. So they're good, fairly big name apps, but. For guys like us, it's I don't think it means anything. I personally, I haven't even looked at them, and I don't plan on downloading any of them. But as far as consumers go,
well, stop for a second. So you don't plan on downloading any of them?
Well, I don't. I looked at the short list of them, and I don't, free or not, because I'm not one of the guys that a lot of people don't want to shell out $5, $10 for an app. Like if there's something I want that I think I'll use, I'll pay for it. So now just because it's free, it's not gonna sway me anymore to go ahead and download it. So that's my prefacing statement. But I think for consumers, it's hard to say. It could go 50-50. I think a lot of them are going to be happy with it. They'll download all the apps, and get the whatever it is, $100 worth of free apps or whatever, and be content. But in the long run, I don't think it's enough to compensate. It's like, hey, your BlackBerry services didn't work for 4 days, but here is a couple free apps to make up for your trouble, because you have these people on huge levels for work and stuff that they just lose production and time and money and everything because their devices went down, and RIM giving free apps to compensate for it, it's not really the greatest plan, I don't think.
See, I think what this shows to me is what App World still needs in terms of merchandising capabilities. The fact that it's specific apps that need to be given away. It would have been way better if RIM said, "Here's a $100 coupon or $100 store credit to your Apple account."
Yeah, they should have credited everybody. That way, everybody can go ahead and pick their own apps and what they want to go ahead and download.
Exactly.
Would have been much easier that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say, at least RIM did something this time. It's the first time that I can ever remember that they've at least tried to go and make it up to customers. And it probably has to do with the fact that it was such a huge outage. But it's better than them doing nothing. But I agree with you, Adam. I agree with you, Blaze. They should have tried to do more.
Well, that's the thing, too. It's like it's the first time it's happened, and it was their longest outage to date. So maybe that's, kind of in short notice, that's the only thing they could come up with to, resurrect the situation quickly, was to offer up the free apps, as opposed to giving away a free case like Apple did with the bumpers or something along those lines, or the credit. Because, logistically, giving away the store credit ideally is way better, but to be able to get, all your developers on board, with that, it just seems, like it was probably much of a hassle. So
that's a good point, too. They'd have to figure that out. It's taking money away from somebody at that point. But the thing that still floors me, though, is... So, Chris, you talked about the communication, and actually compared to outages in the past, this was by far the best communication we've seen from RIM. They actually posted some updates on their website. Mike, they had a couple of press conferences for the public or for anybody who wanted to listen in. Mike L did his apology video as service was starting to get restored. And in the past, there was nothing, right? It was a day after it was all back up and running, then you might get a little statement of some sort. But the big issue isn't it's that if you're affected by the outage, you still don't know. And there's people who are traveling, there's people who rely on this service for business. And if service goes down, they don't know. They need to go out on the web, they need to talk to people, they need to call their carriers before they find out. And RIM needs to do something about that. But once you lose data service, you lose data service. So I don't know if it's a text messaging thing. I just feel there needs to be something that happens in this case. And to me, text messaging would be the alternative, because that still works. RIM has your phone number, I think, right? Mm-hmm. They should be able to message your phone and just say, hey, your BBM and email aren't working. It would go a long way.
I think you're right.
Just real quick,
go ahead.
To go back to what we were saying before, Michelle made a really valid point. I mean, how many of all the BlackBerry subscribers don't even have access to AppWorld, in some countries, because it's not, I don't think it's available like everywhere. So you look at those people that were without that, can't get to AppWorld to download the free apps, and they're just kind of SOL.
Yeah, and on Kevin's point, I agree with you. I think the SMS idea is actually pretty interesting. If customers were given a way to get communication from RIM, a preference, text messaging might be ideal for some people, especially those who aren't in front of a computer very often. Guys like me, and probably you guys, even if we're on the road, we've got our MacBooks with us. I'm going to check my Gmail from the Gmail web client. So if there was an email notice that would go out, I would get it. And I think that RIM absolutely needs to do more. I wrote about this in a blog post where I was critiquing the video. RIM just doesn't communicate with customers directly via email.
So I think on that note, services restored. We all jumped on airplanes. We flew to San Francisco for BlackBerry DevCon 2011. Lots to talk about there. I don't know which order we want to go through it in. Maybe starting with the keynote session, day one on Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah. So good way to start.
So I'm gonna throw out kind of my the conclusion first off before we dive into it. I've been to every BlackBerry show, be it DevCon or WES or BlackBerry World, since 2007, 6/7, and so that's a lot of shows. It's probably 10 or 12 shows by now, plus CES, plus CTIA. I've seen RIM at every major show, plus the one in Barcelona, World Congress, plus Asia DevCon. I've been to them all. This was probably the keynote that. And arguably this is the most pivotal time in RIM's history, right? Their chance to really wow everybody. So, what they're presenting on stage is getting noticed. This was actually, too, our most attended live blog ever. So we had, I think there's like 18,000, 20,000 people tuned in. By far the least exciting presentation.
Uneventful.
It was uneventful. I hate saying bad things. It was the worst keynote I've been to. That's the harshest thing I would say.
You got to preface it too, like when we found out that they were, because we were originally going to plan on trying to stream it, because RIM never shows their keynotes live, and so we had all these big plans to put the webcam up and stream it for everybody. And then we found out, I think it was the night before, that they were going to do a live webcast. So we're like, wow, this is going to be great. They must have so many big things going on that they're going to stream it for the first time, and then we just sat there like, oh.
It was weird. It was the whole first half of the presentation. So this year they split the presentation into two halves. They took an intermission, and the first half was, sort of the announcements, and the second half is more the technical Q&A. And the normal flow for these presentations is typically, Mike L comes out, so RIM founder Mike Lazaridis, talks for 15 or 20 minutes, does his thing, goes through the key statistics, makes a big announcement like last year with the PlayBook. Then somebody else comes out, Dan Dodge kind of thing. That was last year. That was this year too. And then maybe get a couple other people, wrap up, and that's it. And this time it was kind of like Mike L hosted the whole first half. So he was out there for, I think, 90 minutes or 60 minutes at least. Brought on some guests. And every time you thought maybe a big announcement was going to happen, it just didn't. And the big announcement was BBX. They announced BBX, the BlackBerry X platform.
Yeah, rebranding.
But it wasn't really... Yeah, it wasn't an announcement. Like, I don't actually know what the announcement was.
It was just QNX. That's it.
Yeah, it was it was their vision for the future from a platform standpoint, I guess.
Yeah,
Here, we have the video playing. Can we actually pipe this in here?
There was nothing showing what PBX is. It's just, yeah, here it is, but what is it? You know, it's just groundwork.
No visual aids or.
Well, if you look under the hood, so at the technology view, I can re-show BBX, and of course, BBX will come with a fully POSIX certified kernel, open standards, but its microkernel architecture brings some unique values. So you get reliability and security. And to my knowledge, we are the only kernel that has a certified secure kernel and certified safe kernel. And if you look at the historical data during the certification, we showed up with like 7 nines of reliability. That's almost unheard of.
Okay, so let's phase that video out.
Yeah, I mean, that was
like
zero.
Super Dan and Mike just kind of have, you know, a conversation, and it's not like they're really presenting anything to, you know, anyone. They're just going back and forth, which is, you know, Mike's end is fairly scripted, you know, and they're just like having a conversation, and they're not really conveying, you know, like, hey, this is BBX, are you guys excited kind of thing, you know. It's just
and telling us about all these great security features that practically no one in the consumer market actually cares about. So.
Well, you know, the most important thing to me is they didn't have any way to really communicate this to the audience. No visual aids, no videos, no demonstrations. It was like just listening to guys talk about something intangible. That does not help the audience. And when you're doing the pivotal keynote of your career in terms of where RIM is going, that's a complete failure on the part of the communications part of it. Like whoever's in charge of setting up how that looks to the public or to the developers, that was a complete failure.
Yeah, it was strange. And I mean, the whole I actually felt a little awkward watching that first half of the presentation. There was something just not there. And I don't know if it was the style of the presentation, the lack of the announcements. There was just something happening that just didn't feel quite right. And we saw it, you know, there was a lot of articles that came up afterwards where people really still don't understand what BBX is. You know, I've seen it misreported a lot of times that it's a new operating system that they announced. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's really a new operating system.
Nothing new about it.
And like, so the strategic direction of BBX is what? Basically, you have your NDK and your and HTML5/WebWorks, so your two key platforms. You have the QNX-based OS, and it's bringing together the best of BlackBerry. And I think that's where people got confused, thinking this is some new operating system beyond what the tablet OS has, because they sort of pictured it as BBX as being the best of BlackBerry and the best of QNX together. But that doesn't mean it's the merging of some two operating systems into a new one. I mean, this is the QNX-based OS, and they're just going to, you know, make sure they rebuild in the things BlackBerry users love about BlackBerry.
Yeah, it's about recoding all of the features that they've worked for a decade to build into the Java OS.
Right. But not a new OS and nothing to look at, no fancy presentation, and, you know, kind of weird. And then the other weird thing was we're watching this keynote, and everybody's using playbooks. There was a lot of talk about games. It actually felt more like a game conference than a BlackBerry conference. Mm-hmm. And the PlayBook OS they're showing on the displays wasn't, you know, it wasn't the BlackBerry OS we're used to or the PlayBook OS we're used to seeing. So it was basically PlayBook OS 2.0, yet they didn't announce that. And then halfway through the second part of the keynote, I think they had a guy on stage from Adobe, and he kind of mentions offhand the PlayBook 2.0 OS, which we've been looking at for the last hour and a half or 2 hours with nobody announcing and saying what it was. And then Alex Saunders, who we should talk about in a few minutes also, is kind of like, oh, yeah, no, we're making that available on the tablets everybody's getting in a developer version. But it could have been an announcement. You know, I think the media in attendance would have been happy to say, hey, here's PlayBook OS 2.0. And
well, you guys saw the size of the press area. I mean, it was huge relative to the audience base. And they gave people practically nothing spoon-feedable to write about.
I didn't know what to live blog the entire time. That's the first time I've ever just sat there being like, I don't really know what I should be typing right now. Like,
it was funny because, you know, because I'm sitting there because we always video it, so I still had the camera up, you know, and I'm taking pieces, and Kevin kept leaning over, you know, and he's like, I don't know what I should be writing right now, and I was like, you know, I'm like, should I still be filming this? Because we like, you know, obviously like to get the parts that we can repost and, you know, kind of delve into a little bit, but we're both just kind of there, like, you know, like none of this is new, none of this is exciting, like they're totally botching things because we're, everybody's taking pictures of these screenshots that we know is a new OS version for the PlayBook, but they haven't said anything about it yet. And it was super, super awkward. And all I'm running in my mind is BlackBerry world where we got totally surprised when they started playing the PlayBook video just out of the blue, and it was like the most exciting thing. And then this was just the extreme opposite, where we're just kind of like waiting to see what's going to come and waiting. And I remember towards the end I looked over at Kevin and I'm like, this is it. I'm like, Mike's going to wrap up here. He's going to walk off stage. And Kevin's like, no. Like, he didn't announce anything. Like, there's going to be that one more thing. And I'm like, no. And like, I turned around because the teleprompter was behind and I see down the bottom, it says Mike exits. And I'm like, no. I'm like, he's walking off. This is all there is. And that was it. And we're just like, and it was the end.
What we should be talking about here too is that the other CEO prepped the media to expect some big time.
And didn't even show.
We're going to leapfrog the competition with what we're showing.
He usually doesn't show up at DevCon, right? I think only 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, the first time they did it in San Fran, Jim came on stage with the CEO from Adobe, and he took over Mike's position in the keynote. But, he gave the impression that they were going to announce a leapfrogging of the industry. Not an impression. He was quoted saying that directly. And unless they made some kind of
into a different country so that he wasn't there for the announcements.
Yeah, they should both have coordinated views of what's being announced and coordinated views on what represents a leapfrogging of the industry and what represents a rebranding exercise.
So here's my question, and maybe, Chris, you might have a bit of experience here outside of the RIM space to answer it. Is there some sort of rule that the CEO has to give the keynote or the majority of the keynote? Does every company do this, or is this something that, you could get away from a little bit?
Well,
does Mike L really have to give that presentation?
No, I'm thinking that the right model is, you look at what Steve Jobs would do at Apple, and he would give a lot of information, but then he would bring on other hosts and let them deliver their part of the show, and then it would get handed back to Steve Jobs, and then he'd bring out someone else, right? And Renee, I don't know if you want to pipe in here at all since you're in the background recording all this, but you can vouch for that. That's worked very well for Apple, right?
Well, I think if you have a CEO who can present the way Steve Jobs does, you put him up on stage. It's not that he is CEO, it's that he's Steve Jobs and can present like that. But if you're not, you get your marketing VP or your product director, whoever can present like that, and you put him up.
Yeah, even
I think
Samsung,
RIM needs a new face. RIM needs a new face that will be a presentable person. Like Alex Saunders would be. We're going to talk about him next, but somebody who is just super passionate and a smooth, polished presenter. And that's what RIM should do, in my opinion.
This isn't a slight against Mike L. I mean, Mike L is an engineer. The guy's brilliant. His success, his talent, I don't think he has anything left to prove, right? I don't think the world expects everybody to be a Steve Jobs. But put the people on stage who can do the best job at it. And enjoy doing it. See, actually enjoy doing it. My thought is, and it could be wrong, is that Mike L probably doesn't look forward to doing those presentations. Maybe he does, but I don't think he does. And I'm sure it's every time around, it's probably a lot of stress that he'd rather be working on stuff and making things happen than worrying about what to do for the presentation and a keynote. And I don't know. I think they should just put somebody out there who can sell and loves it. And I think that's fine. RIM's a big enough brand that you don't need the CEO there on stage necessarily all the time.
Yeah, they need a point man, and it doesn't have to be the CEO. I agree.
Okay. So first part, moving away from the first part of the keynote where they didn't really announce anything other than BBX. I mean, we Dan Dodge came out. I love Dan Dodge. I think he fits the role of what he's presenting perfectly on stage, right? Because he gets to come in as kind of the technical OS guy from QNX and talk security and the great features. And I think he does that well. But moving ahead into the technical keynote, or the second part of the keynote, was it Alex Saunders who came out first? He kicked it off?
Yes, I think he did.
Yeah, I think Alex came out first.
So this is a huge change for us because, again, of all the shows I've been to over the years, this one was a little different in general because a lot of the faces we know weren't there. Guys like Jeff McDowell, Tyler Lessard, Mike Kirkup from the DevRel team and beyond, they're no longer with the company. So we've talked in the blogs. We saw Alex Sanders got promoted into this position or came on board RIM or QNX as the position of VP of developer relations. So he came out on stage. We didn't know what to expect, but he was really good and well received. I think by the audience, by developers, by the viewers who are commenting on our live chat and blog. He came out and he really talked to the audience. And I think that's maybe the difference I would say between a guy like Alec and then say Mike L. Mike L's kind of presenting to the audience. He's on stage, a little bit of acting, and Alec came out and just kind of talked to the people in the crowd. And I think it went over well. He announced some funny things like BlackBerry Jam and Jammies and
he didn't have a fake conversation with someone else that was totally scripted. He just, like you said, Kevin, he talked to the audience and he talked to the developers straight up, and he was honest about what's going on. He was honest about, Java getting cut off and lots of stuff. I mean, he just made everything seem like it was moving in the right direction. Now, it all remains to be seen whether it will continue that way, but I was really impressed with the way he presented.
Yeah, Alec kept things real. He didn't try and feed any bullshit, really. He just kept everything the way that it was and said, listen, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is what we're planning. And kind of took direction that Mike L. should have had with it, rather than standing there and just saying how awesome things look. That's how I see it anyways. If there was anybody to be going ahead and continuing on doing those keynotes, it would probably be best suited for Alex to be able to go ahead and present that. Him and Dan Dodge took the stage, really.
Yeah, there's some other guys. I mean, RIM's got a lot of guys who are good, and I'm sure there's a lot who are great who've never been on stage before. But, like Alan Panzanak came out, talked to Enterprise. He's always comfortable on stage. He's really well-spoken, does a good job. So, maybe more than just saying, well, it should be Alec doing the keynote or something. It's more like RIM just needs to go through and pick out their people who excel in those environments. Yeah. And, when they have them, throw them out there. Because I guess presentations matter, right? Like, it does matter. And it sets a tone for the rest of the conference, and it sets a tone for what the people, for that big press section, what they're going to be writing about after. But that's the other thing that kind of I want to touch on quick is, so we're kind of bashing the keynote a little bit. The argument to that is, this is a developer conference. It's not for the media. It's not for anything. It's just for developers who are in attendance to get the most out of the platform and learn things, which I don't disagree with, except when you have a massive, massive press section, which there was, with cameras from NBC and CBC and you name it there. Just tell them not to show up then if that's going to be the case. Because that's the thing. When you have that kind of a press line there and press junket waiting, you expect something. And then this was like, wow, didn't deliver. But the good news was a lot of other stuff happened that day in the mobile space, including Apple missing earnings, including Google's ice cream sandwich event. And it almost seemed that because there was so much other news happening, RIM just kind of went under the radar. So maybe it was pretty good, actually. If RIM knew they weren't going to be announcing phones, it actually turned out really well that so much other stuff was going on, because it probably reduced kind of that damage, if anything.
Yeah, and you know what? There was also, aside from the keynote, which definitely was a disappointment for everybody, there was a lot of interesting stuff that went on at DevCon, and I guess we'll move into talking about that, but there was plenty of good stuff to be found, and it feels like instead of calling it a game of leapfrog, it should have been called a game of hide and seek. We had to go and look for this stuff, but there was stuff to be learned, and there was interesting stuff going on.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Because normally, obviously, like the big general session keynote is always like your kickoff to these conferences, and we go, with these huge high hopes. I mean, we have these giant backpacks on with our laptops and cameras and microphones and this and that, just ready for the keynote. Like, hey, what are they going to say? What's going to pop up? What's new? And you look back at things like when they announced the playbook, then there was this huge rush to see it, even though it was behind glass, it was still there, and there's just all this buzz like, well, we're going to have to do this, 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 and this, but we left this keynote and, we're just kind of like, well, what's now? Like, we're kind of like looking at the schedule, seeing like, what sessions are there and stuff, because there wasn't that, that new wow factor that, like, hey, we just announced this and we're going to be showing it off, like at, I think, BlackBerry World, and they announced the phones, and they're like, there's going to be this press session here. You come between this time in this room. You can have a chat, and we do all these hands-on videos and stuff like that. There was absolutely none of that. There was no buzz after the keynote, no, new fun stuff to play with, you know, and it was just kind of.
I did grab my playbook that was loaded with PlayBook OS 2.0 and got a video. So that was one thing. We had one
thing.
They
never announced that, so that doesn't count.
Sorry, you're right.
They did.
They did not
Everyone
announce.
showed it.
Technically.
You know, I think Chris, you made that point, or Blaze, I should say, with press releases. You know, normally on a RIM keynote day, there's like 5 or 6 press releases that come out. So we're always in a rush to fire up press releases. I don't think we did that with anything this time.
No, RIM issued 2 press releases from DevCon. That was it. And normally you don't even have time to go to the actual developer sessions or, you know, any of the other sessions that RIM is holding because you're too busy doing other things like looking at new devices and getting hands-on with new stuff. There was none of that this time, so it just didn't make any sense, really. So much to cover.
Yeah, but you know what? We had some really good press sessions, actually. RIM did put together some great panels of people we could tap into.
Yeah, they did. That was really good.
Which we'll talk about. I mean, we could jump there right now. You know, maybe finishing off the keynote first, though. You know, they did show off in the technical session some cool things, right? The TAT guys came on stage, showed off Cascades, which back in BlackBerry world, we did a little video. We got a nice sneak peek at the NDK and what that was kind of looking like. But now they sort of showed it off with more examples. You can watch the video here. This was a cool sort of what was this, like a note-taking app?
Yeah, this was a note-taking app, and they absolutely stole the show. Other than Alec on stage, this was the kick-ass stuff that, you know, was an amplified version of what we saw at BlackBerry World in Orlando. Because they only showed, if I remember correctly, they only showed the contact list version of Cascade, that implementation of it.
No, really cool stuff. Yeah, where is it? That's the thing, you know.
Point. They show us all this wonderful stuff, but they never give it to you. Like,
they could have
gone ahead and did that.
It's coming in BBX, Blaze. You got to have patience for it.
I have BBX now in 2.0, and it actually reduced the functionality of my playbook. So,
yeah, they had to do a bunch of things to, like, they broke video chat so that some of the gaming stuff would work.
What else?
BlackBerry Bridge doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use a workaround to be able to access Bridge.
Blaze,
to their credit, though, they did tell us that it was a beta and that we had to sign a waiver basically to say we agreed to download that or to pick up the playbook that had that version of the OS in it.
Yeah, but they didn't do that for everybody else. Like, anybody who has a playbook can go ahead and download that, and I don't think that they necessarily communicated it to the point where, like, okay, listen, this is available, it's only available for developers, but you probably don't really want to use it. Instead, there's people out there that are downloading this, checking it out, and some are going to be under the assumption that this is what they're going to be getting to a certain point. I mean, there's not a whole lot that you can actually do with it. Yeah, it's cool to play with the Android app player if you can figure out how to do it, but other than that, they basically broke the functionality. And I get it, I really do. It's a developer build. It's not for everybody. But the point is that there are people that are going out there, they're downloading it and using it and treating it like it's not a developer build. They should have, limited to developers if that was the case, or given us a working version of it, because clearly they showed it. They showed native email and stuff. Well, actually, they didn't. They showed it in the screenshots, but they didn't actually show it functioning. But they had all of that stuff up there. That's another thing. Why did they even show it in the screenshots if they didn't even show it off itself?
You know what I really think? I think RIM is just working really, really hard right now to bring this stuff to market, so they're less concerned about you at this very second, and they're more concerned about maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now where they actually push it live.
I'm the person that they need to be concerned about.
Nah, but you've got your playbook and you're going to deal with it, right? They need to just get it fixed up so consumers spend more money buying it. You're the smart guy. You can deal with it right now.
So
what we should talk about
sorry, go ahead, Kevin. I was going to say let's talk about Cascades, but let's go.
No, we need to talk about PlayBook OS 2.0. So we talked about what's not working in it just now. We didn't actually talk about what's changed from the first PlayBook OS or the tablet OS. So that's the first thing, right? Before it used to be called the BlackBerry Tablet OS. Now
that's how I deal with it.
Now they're calling it PlayBook OS 2.0. On the user interface side of things, what they've changed is they've actually scrapped all those views. So instead of having all and favorites and media, they've gone to a more iPad type of approach where there's no distinction as you swipe left and right between the different panes of application shortcuts. But you can now drag icons on top of each other to create folders. You can drag icons to the top of the screen into sort of a favorites bar. And then actually they enlarged the size of minimized apps when you're multitasking. So they're a little bit bigger, so you actually have less showing on the display at one time. I don't know. It's a different look. Whether it's better or worse, I'm not actually sure. I was getting used to the old one. I think this one's a little bit more flexible for users. The reason they said is if you start to put hundreds of apps on this on your PlayBook, the old system wasn't as friendly, where you just start scrolling up and down through massive lists. So by going to this thing, there's less scrolling involved. You can go left and right. You can create folders on the home screen for your key stuff, which I agree with. But we saw some mixed comments on it on Crackberry from our readers. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Roundtable, Adam. Do you like the changes? Not like the changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, but it's like we said before, it's just it's kind of like arbitrary now what works and what doesn't. I mean, I had some issues because I went to upload it or to upgrade rather, and I got the new update and everything came in, and then when I get done and I'm wondering, I put some Android stuff on there and I'm hitting my icons and nothing's opening and I'm looking at it and then I look at Darius and he's like, oh, if you had the leaked the leaked Android player installed on there, you have to wipe your OS and install it again. So basically, since I had the leaked one on there before, I had to wipe it all, and then it reverts back to the previous OS, which is just totally ridiculous, and then you have to upgrade the entire thing again. But, I mean, overall, I like the layout a little better where you have, the featured bar or whatever it is, and the folders obviously are great because that was long overdue. But, I could go on. There's pros and cons, stuff I like more and stuff I definitely am unhappy with now. But I think it's, kind of a step in the right direction for sure.
Here's what I think. If we look past all the things they had to break in the beta and just pretend that all of those work, to me it's still a disappointment because while I like the features that they've added, it's just not that much. So there's still no punctuation features, auto punctuation, auto spell correction on the keyboard, aside from when you're bridged, and I know the bridging is broken right now. There's still no file manager. There's still I don't think there's any Bluetooth A2DP support or anything like that. So what have they really added other than some tweaks to the layout? I'm not sure.
Mainly behind the scenes stuff. At least that's what was, told to us in our hands-on video.
Yeah, but what does that even mean?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's the whole point. We don't care about behind the scenes stuff. I really don't care how it works. I want it to work. Not care about how it works. I want it to do the things that I want it to do. I want these apps. I want obviously my Flash to work. I want my Android player.
Look, I want to move on.
It doesn't do any of that stuff now.
Yeah, let's go on to maybe
we need to move on.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, here's what I want to say though. Obviously, the whole message from this show was things aren't ready for prime time yet. If RIM had everything ready, they would have showed them to us on stage. They would show what they have. Obviously, everything is kind of in a state of flux right now. If the QNX phone was ready, they would have shown it off there. I'm pretty sure there was QNX phones at DevCon, but they were probably just not being shown off to the public. We've seen that before. That's for partners and winning partners over. It's not ready for us yet. Maybe we'll see QNX phones at CES. I mean, that's what I'm really hoping for right now. That's kind of the next big show. Gives RIM a little more time.
I'm willing to forgive these guys for a lousy presentation, given that they are making a lot of progress. It's just, you're right. It's not ready to be shown or distributed to customers globally yet.
Yeah, it's kind of like Strike One. DevCon Strike One. They have another chance to swing at CES. Let's hope they deliver there. I really hope they do. If they don't, the next chance is at BlackBerry World. And, they better by then is the bottom line, because I don't think people are going to wait for them to come up to bat again.
Strike one for me was launch of the device with no native email or anything else. So they're on like strike two. So they have CES to impress.
Yeah. Where do you guys want to go next?
Let's just talk about some of the good things that came out of the keynote, announcement-wise. I mean, WebGL, I think, got developers excited.
That was a definite highlight.
It kind of just flew out there under the radar, though, but that got a big round of applause, I think, from the audience.
So has anyone else in the competitive landscape demoed anything like that?
I'm not sure offhand. I don't think we have the WebGL demo handy.
It was pretty good. I don't know if I've seen anything like that on another platform.
Yeah, I mean, it basically looked like pretty high-end gaming, but it was done through the web browser.
Yeah, and so I think that what this tells you is RIM's making some really big steps to close the gap in terms of app capability with not only the HTML5 and WebGL stuff that they showed, but you look at the third-party gaming engines from Unity and Marmalade, and there is some really impressive stuff happening that's capable on PlayBook, and it bridges the gap to where the guys like iPad and iOS are already.
Yeah. Cascades we talked about a little bit. Basically trying to put a lot of the eye candy, sexy factor of apps very easily into developers' hands through the NDK. Is the NDK available now? Actually, what's the status of the NDK? Is it still beta or is it officially?
I think it's officially
the NDK
available.
is the first version is gold. The second version is beta.
Okay. So, that's coming along. The thing with Cascades that a few people pointed out, which I don't disagree with yet, is while super sexy, it doesn't necessarily scream intuitive UI yet, which I think is a valid concern, right? That as RIM rolls out these kinds of features and you start to see these kinds of apps happen, what's going to make them really popular with users is if they're easy to use and sexy. But if they're just sexy and complicated to use, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think they have to be as dead easy as, push a button to close your apps like the iPad, but I do think you're right. They need to be easy enough to figure out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, RIM's going to need to give, documentation and style guidelines and that kind of thing, not just let it become a free-for-all, I think is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and if you look at what made iOS so successful, they did have a user interface and style guideline document. It was something like 100 pages long. And if you submitted an app to the Apple App Store, it just got rejected if you didn't follow those guidelines.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Chris, earlier you mentioned the death of Java. We should really talk about that because that was definitely one of the things that
yes.
It wasn't really talked about during the keynote, I guess. Java was just kind of ignored.
I think it was death by implication, right? They just said, if you want to write an app that will get carried forward into the life of BBX, it has to be HTML5 or native. In fact, they didn't. That's the promise that Alex Saunders made. He didn't even promise that, Air apps or what else am I missing here? Well, Air mainly. He didn't even promise that would have a life beyond. So I think Air and Android are stopgaps to just improve the RIM platform for now and get a lot of apps in people's hands. But you have to program native or HTML5 if you want to be if you want to be a BlackBerry developer. Those are the ways forward.
Yeah, and there were definitely a lot of panicked Java developers at the conference. We ran into that day, the next day, as that sort of became more apparent. A little bit of panic. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to go ahead. I ran into a little crowd that had formed around Alec after the intermission. And, I was just coming back to my seat, and I noticed this, and I stopped because I was going to ask him, hey, does this mean Java's dead? And that's exactly what this whole crowd was asking is, what do you mean? Like, my existing code base just has no value now? And, he's very good the way he handled it. He just said, look, I'm sorry that this is happening, but this is the way we have to move forward. And he didn't make any bones about it. He just told it straight up and didn't apologize for the direction that BlackBerry has to move.
Yeah, and the other message there is, look, there's still 70 million people on the BlackBerry OS. there are still going to be millions of BlackBerry 7 smartphones sold. There's a lot of money to be made there by catering to that market for the foreseeable future. At the same time, you do want to make sure you're set for the future, for the next generation. But honestly, today there's a couple 100,000 QNX-based BlackBerry devices in the hands of consumers who might buy apps, while there's 70 million of BlackBerry OS. So while the platform might not have a future, to say it's dead yet, it's not true. I just think RIM needs to be very clear now at giving people, those developers, an easy transition. Talking to, I forget who I was talking to. It might have been Rob Cow, or it might have been you, Chris, even. No, I think it was Rob Cow, who said, look, give us some manuals. Give us just do something to show like you care. Give us free books that say, hey, you're a Java developer. Here's what you're going to have to learn and do. Here's how you did it the old way. Here's how you're going to do this the new way.
They need to set up like a whole free online university for C++ programming for BlackBerry and APIs and everything.
Yeah, because they don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to totally alienate the people who've been around there over the years. I think
they're going to have a bunch of jam sessions.
That's right. They are going to have a bunch of jam
BlackBerry
sessions.
jammies.
Oh, too interesting. Android app player I'd really like to talk about. Now, that was... So again, the keynote almost wasn't... What I found interesting about the keynote was less on what was said and more about what wasn't said, or how it was said and where it was said. And Android app player didn't make an appearance in the keynote until way close to the end. There was a few-minute discussion on it. They demoed a few of the Android apps via the app player, and then that was kind of it.
It almost, that they brought it up so late.
Yeah, to me, it almost felt like an afterthought. Like, not an afterthought. It almost felt to me like if RIM hadn't have announced it a year ago or last April, whenever it was, they probably wish they didn't, and they would have dropped it off by now. But because they did, they're going through with it. That was my take from the keynote. But on Wednesday, we had a really good Q&A session with press panel, and it was with Chris Smith and I forget the other guy's name. Basically, he's like an evangelist out in the Valley for the Android side of things right now.
Yeah, I don't remember his name either, but I really liked the way he was matter of fact in answering questions.
He was great.
That was a great session.
That was the craziest Q&A. We actually did an audio tape of it, and I think we'll play it on the blogs. But that was, normally these Q&As go through maybe a 20, 30-minute presentation, and then there's time for questioning, which usually lasts like 5 to 10 minutes because there's never that many questions. And the Android app player Q&A had maybe 1 minute of presentation followed by 59 minutes of nonstop questions. And Kevin was like the annoying kid in grade 6. It was like oh, the whole time.
It was awesome. Kevin, on that note, you should talk about the main issue that seems to be holding back the public release of this.
So so one key issue is the implementation of the app player within the UI. So right now, when you when you install an Android app onto the PlayBook, it gets treated like anything else. There is an application icon in the main tray of icons. But when you open it up, it opens in a window or in an application that is the Android app player. Now from there, you can go back to your home screen and open another Android app. But it doesn't open a second window. Instead, it replaces the running Android app within the app player, and it's there. And you can have multiple apps running, but then within the Android app player, you need to sort of toggle back and forth between them. And it's it changes the user interface. If Rene Ritchie saw it, he would cringe over how it's breaking the UI paradigm, and it's kind of the end of the world. Rene, if you're listening, you could probably say how bad that is.
Yeah, he's not listening.
He went to the bathroom.
I think that's why they haven't launched it, because they know that. They do not want that out in people's hands the way it is.
No, it's true. It's not clean. So, and the guy said, ideally, I want it to not look like that. And from my standpoint, it can't look like that when it goes live, because that's just a mess, especially if you start paying for apps. Like if I pay $7 for an app in App World, and it's an Android app, and then I pay $7 for another app, but now I can't run them the way I run all my other apps because they have to be within this player, and it's just not going to fly. So they have to fix that still. And maybe it's fixed and they just didn't show it, but that has to change. the other question I asked that I found to be, so this again, when we talk about confusion and RIM not being clear on the marketing message, this was a spot where we got some clarity in regards to how is RIM going to embrace Android apps from a consumer standpoint. And in reality, I don't think they are. So right now, this message of the playbook and the BBX supporting Android apps, it's really geared towards Android developers to bring their apps over. I think it's geared towards us tech journalists so we can, not bash BlackBerry and say they're getting Android apps. And it's probably geared towards Wall Street, so it's addressing, Jim Balsilli's question of how are we going to get app tonnage on the platform. But to consumers who are buying BBX phones a year from now, I don't think you're going to see marketing campaigns saying, here's BlackBerry now with Android apps. These apps are BlackBerry apps once they're installed. It's an Android developer who takes it, ports it, signs up with AppWorld as an Android developer, or as a BlackBerry developer, sorry, puts it into AppWorld, and then a consumer buys it as a BlackBerry app. They don't know if it's an Android app from within AppWorld or not. So I don't think RIM's ever going to embrace that as sort of a marketing thing, which is probably good because, it's confusing. And even I was talking to Phil Nickinson this morning about it. And again, he wasn't clear on that message. He thought it's RIM is really going to be out there saying, BlackBerry now running Android apps, which he kind of thought, well, maybe that's going to, hurt their brand. Isn't that helping to build somebody else's brand? Which it is. But I don't think RIM's actually planning to do that. They're just really getting the apps in and then their BlackBerry apps to consumers.
I think you're right. This is hopefully not going to be branded as BlackBerry now does Android, but it'll just show up that, hey, the store actually has a lot more stuff on the shelves, and that's a good thing. The other thing it's doing is it's getting developers in the BlackBerry door. So their foot's in the door, they're signed up as a vendor. And now if Alex Saunders is doing his job, which I think we all agree he looks like he's more than capable, he's going to hook them in and say, hey, look what else you can do on BlackBerry. Look at this Cascade stuff. This is, look at all the awesome stuff you can do. And then you get your hands on a whole bunch more developers that you have to use your evangelist strategy to pull in.
And Android developers are already familiar with the TAT stuff too, because TAT was working with Android before RIM went ahead and bought them.
So the real
strategy.
Now, and we'll do a follow-up article, I think, getting into the nitty-gritty of it, because it's an interesting thing, Android App Player, right? Like, they're not supporting everything out there. So where it works best is for apps that kind of are standalone, like Android games, where you just open it and they're always showing the example of the pool playing game, that kind of thing, or for apps that pull content from the web. So IMDb works. I think a Twitter client would work. One person in the crowd said they had Gmail working up on it because it's pulling content down. But for something else, and again, actually talking to Rob, a good example was with SmartGuard. Like he said, well, there's no way I could take my Android version of SmartGuard and bring it to BBX. Like, it's just not going to work. And you can go to RIM's website to see what they're going to support and not support. But we'll follow up on it. But that was definitely one of the best parts of the show, was just that press panel. The real highlight, though, of DevCon 11 came from Adam Zeiss, who is the inventor of the BlackBerry kickstand. This was the talk of the show. We saw numerous BlackBerry Bold 9900, 9930 owners, standing around tables with their BlackBerry Bolds propped up on the kickstand.
Show us.
Come on, Adam, show it to us.
Can get my battery door open.
Well, while he works on it, I'll explain what the kickstand is. Basically, you take your battery door off your 9900, and then you kind of put it back in, with just the top part sticking in. Here's the demo. There you go. And you insert it, insert the door into the slot, and now you have a propped up kickstand. And your Bold 9900 is now much more friendly for media viewing, for typing, for looking at it. It really is amazing. BlackBerry kickstand, invented by Adam Zeiss. And the other almost as big talk was definitely the new trend of wearing your playbook around your neck, preferably on a gold chain, but we found lanyards to work no problem. We found a lot of options. I'm actually going to a Winnipeg Jets game next week. It's going to be Rangers versus the Jets, so I'm going to wear this with the Jets logo on it, so you can watch for me. I think I got tickets like right against the glass, so I'll be spreading the playbook love on TV.
Like that Monday night when we were walking over to the Thirsty Bear was hilarious.
Adam, show your video. Do you have your video handy? This you have to. We have to go big screen to show this off. The creepiest thing to play on your playbook when you're wearing it around your neck.
So we went to a tweet up, and I was just trying to find like funnier and funnier things. So the funniest one that I thought I had was I played the Mike L apology video and just walked around with it. All the room people were just glaring at me. And then ultimately I started playing this video. I looped it, so I just had this around my neck. And Kevin was saying it reminded him of little Harry Potter action, but it was kind of freaking people out, because it was just kind of on a whim. Awesome. I think I'm going to do a better video and wear it around for Halloween, but it's like I was trapped in my own playbook and I couldn't get out.
When you started knocking on the screen, that was just classic.
So yeah, it was I was knocking on the screen and stuff. So it was kind of amusing, but we made the most of the conference. It was a good time.
It was good. And the other big highlight, of course, was my presentation on Wednesday.
Yeah, you got a ton of feedback from people on that. People just loved it.
Kevin had the second largest presentation there.
Thanks, Adam.
It's How many people showed up, Kevin?
Second only to Jane McGonigal, who was the featured speaker. So
it's true.
Just saying.
But
replacing Will.i.am.
So true. No, it was actually really fun. A lot of good feedback on the presentation. I was invited out to DevCon Asia to do it again, but I think we're a little too busy right now on the Mobile Nations front for me to take the time to go do that. But really well received, which was awesome, and some good tips in there for developers. So I think when I get a chance, I'll do a little Cole's Notes version, or what's it called, Adam? Cliff's Notes for the Americans? Cliff Notes?
Yeah, we do Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Cliff Notes and Cole's Notes. I'll do a shorter version for the blogs, and we'll put it up onto the site for all the devs to see.
You can use ScreenFlow to make it.
Yeah, exactly. It was good. But it was really good overall. And, I think the last thing, though, that, kind of talking about just the vibe at DevCon this year, attendance must have been down from last year. I think that the biggest thing that, probably the thing that jumped out the most at me at the show was going into the mobility pavilion, or whatever it's called, the solution showcase, where sort of the main area where the opening reception is and people eat lunch, and the Ask the Experts area set in the back. Normally when you go to these shows, you have row after row after row after row of, sponsors on hand, people who've paid money to show off their apps, their services, etc. in the space. And that's where Crackberry Kevin runs around with his video camera like crazy and talks to everybody. There was literally, 8 booths maybe?
Yeah, it was pretty small this year. Not a lot of people willing to pay money to pitch their stuff at the show.
And that was probably the scariest thing I saw there, because that shows you sort of the current state and perception, not from what RIM's projecting to the world, but from how people living in that ecosystem are feeling. And if that wasn't a message to RIM that they need to work their asses off right now to deliver something to get us all really excited about, I don't know what is, because that was huge.
See, even kind of the state of their mindset. Like when you go to the conferences, normally they have these huge parties. Like at BlackBerry World, they threw a giant party at Universal Studios, which they kind of like rented out part of. And in years past, they've had this party where, like Will.i.am DJ'd the one year, they had Joss Stone the other year. So it's like this big, huge cocktail party. Everybody goes, and this year it was just in that showcase. They had, I think 2 or 3 air hockey tables, and they had some playbooks hooked up with games, and they had, a few bars and snacks and stuff, and that was it. So it was just kind of, it was a totally different conference as a whole. It was,
I think it's probably not fair for us to compare a WES or BB World show to a DevCon show, but I think relative to last year's DevCon show was held at Moscone West, if I remember correctly, and I think it was a lot bigger. So you're right. The attendance had to have been down quite a bit.
It had to have been, because even looking at the session numbers, right? So I had, like Adam said, the second most attended show or session. I think I had 90 people who signed up for it, and probably 60-ish or so, maybe 65 who showed up, and that was the second biggest. And I remember other DevCon sessions where I'd show up a few minutes late, and it was standing room only at the back.
Well, remember Dan Dodge last year doing the playbook overview, the Unix overview? Packed house.
Crazy. So this year, just wasn't as many people around. At the keynote, it felt pretty busy, but I guess they can make that room kind of smaller so it fills up nicely. So I don't know what the actual numbers were. And I have a feeling there might have been a lot of people on day passes on the Tuesday that weren't there on the Wednesday.
Definitely true.
But a lot quieter. So, I mean, that's it. It's in RIM's hands right now. I mean, I think they're in a position where they're almost there. You know they are. They just need to. The strategy's set. I think nobody doubts the power of the platform. It's just a matter of execution. And I'm guessing CES is the next checkup we'll have on how they're doing. So hopefully they're doing well.
Yeah.
Oh, and I saw a white BlackBerry Bold 9900.
2 of them.
Shh! Don't get the people in trouble, Chris.
I didn't say any names.
I know. But yeah, it was pretty hot. So when that goes on sale, I think we'll all be buying those. But on that note, I think unless there's something else, guys, let's wind it down. Keep the show to barely over an hour, I think. And that's it. Our first Crackberry video podcast. It was a little awkward, but could have been worse. We'll get a debrief after to see what we can improve. I definitely need to fix this whole situation up. But
yeah. At the tweet up, this is the most awesome shirt ever. That's actually a real pin. So you can get those. Those are awesome.
Now you didn't do your pin though. You did your website address.
No, it's a pin. You can put whatever text you want at the bottom. So I just asked him to put chrisyumistowski.com because I didn't want to have it say like BBM me or call me or something. I thought that was a little lame, so I just put my URL instead. But it's I mean. I think RIM ought to ship stickers like that with every single BlackBerry with the pin number customized right on it. Get some viral love going.
It's coming. There's still a lot of love. And speaking of love, probably my favorite part of DevCon 11 was all our BlackBerry super fanboys who were there. It was awesome.
Yeah, they all got to go out.
Yeah, we had three. The 3 who could came out. So we had Alex there, Marco, and Julian. And did some dinner, lots of love. Worked out great. Whenever you do a video contest or any kind of contest and you promise you're taking your winners, the winners with you to an event, that's a little scary, right? From our standpoint. Adam's like, oh no, what if we get a crazy person who wins? But we lucked in here and it was totally a great show, really added to it. So best part of DevCon 11, definitely the people. I think that's the bottom.
I shouldn't have shown my shirt. Somebody already BBM'd me.
Yeah. Oh, they scanned it on the screen?
Yeah, I didn't realize it would actually work. I guess the resolution's good enough. Decline.
Too funny.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, that's it. For more on all of the shows we do on the network, just head to mobilenations.com. You can find all the shows because I don't have all of them memorized like Renee does. Crackberry Podcast. We're going to do this thing fairly regularly. We'll become pros at it. So thanks for bearing with us on our first live podcast with video on the new system here. It's a lot of fun. And you can find me on crackberry.com or on the Twitter at crackberrykevin.
I'm aboutme/Adam or Azeiss on Twitter.
And I'm CUmiastowski on Twitter or chrisumiastowski.com. You have to learn the spelling of my last name to get there.
Yeah. Chris.
And you can find me at Blaze, BLA1ZE on the Twitters.
Cool. That's it, everybody. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you
guys.
Kevin out.
Blackberry.com